The only holidays we had in those days were bank holidays.
That's right.
They were statutory holidays by law. And they were called bank holidays because the banks closed.
But they wouldn't, miners wouldn't be off work because you had a job to get the, to keep your job.
If you were out of work, or if you didn't go to work, you wouldn't be paid.
No.
People were always glad to have a holiday, but it was not until 1938 when the government introduced legislation to the effect that people had to be paid for their holidays. Before, they lost money when they went on holiday, see? So weren't many people taking holidays then. But after 1938, it was customary. Everybody had a week's holiday, and they were paid for it. But I'm thinking of Whitchurch treats going back long before that. In the 1914-18 war, I remember as far back as that, when all the chapels in Wales ran what's called a Whitchurch treat. And on the Whit Sunday, they would take their chapel members, particularly the Sunday school members, the youngsters, the children, on a trip to the nearest fields and have an outdoor picnic, as it were. And they ran races as well, that sort of thing. But that was called the Sunday School Whitchurch treat.
We went from 4 Elms Road, which was the Trinity Church, and we always used to go on the Whitchurch treat to Tea-Free Farm in Rumney. That was the spot. But it was a wonderful day. We were very fortunate. It did dry up, and there was lots to do. Kiddies, picnics, as John said, all kinds of stalls, all full entertainment, but all spontaneous. You joined in everything, and it was a wonderful day.
We had lunch and tea in Coney Beach. They'd have a separate hall there, and then they would give us a few coppers in our pocket to go across to this fairground, and we'd spend it on the fairground. And that was marvellous. And always on the train.
There was great excitement the night before. My brother used to go to help to put up the coconut shies, but invariably it was always pouring with rain that morning. But nevertheless, 6 o'clock they would go out before all the rest to put up the coconut shies and prepare all the stalls and different things. And then we children, I'm not sure what time it was about 10 o'clock, I think. Then we would all scramble onto the backs of these open lorries on the little primary chairs. But it was very precarious, I can assure you. I remember vaguely someone falling off.
Yeah, they used the Sunday school
the little chairs,
slatted chairs, slatted seats or chairs, and they roped them onto the lorry, and the driver exercised great care in driving, because he didn't have far to go, no more than two miles. And I remember on one occasion we went on a Foden steam wagon. It wasn't a steamroller, it was a steam wagon, and it was run by steam from a fire that was going, and the smudge used to go out of the engine and right over the body of the vehicle. And I happened to be wearing white.
We had different ideas up from where I came, you see, up outside Merthyr.
Yeah.
And each chapel had their own day for going on trips, a Sunday school trip we used to call it. And then they'd take us either by train or charabanc in those days, going back somewhere. It's like a huge car, open car. Do you remember the open cars? Well, it's like a huge thing. It would be sit about 4 in the width, and there'd be separate seats back. And then at the back there'd be a hood, you see. So we used to like to sit on that hood. Not on the seat. Until we were yelled after and said, "Get down on your seat."
I remember in particular, there was one of our members, an elder. He was a wholesale grocer, so he supplied the cherry cake. But he was very careful. He was I don't say he was mean, but he was careful. He saw that you only had one slice of cherry cake, So he'd keep his eye on you when you were there, having your charity. And that's something that stays in my mind for a long time.
When we got to the field, bye Jack, when we got to the field, we had a bun and I think it was milk, a glass of milk. And then we'd stay there all day till our mothers came. But I always thought it was miles away. But I think it was only Heath Park, you know. Really, it seemed to be miles away because, of course, we didn't go anywhere in those days. Only to Barry Island sometimes.
The trains used to come down from the valleys with a whole church load of people. Or when it was the miners' holidays, they'd have 2 or 3 train loads come down from the Rhondda Valley right the way down there, and then there'd be one big rush down to the beach. One big avalanche of people.
I remember being on the train, and it must have been a miners' train because my dad worked in the post office up there, but in Penrith, but we were always included because we were 4 children. And we came down to Barry, and there was no prom, it was just sand dunes, but the fair was there. And of course Barry Island was a big occasion then, you know, it was crowded.
The buses and trains used to arrive there was a bus station and the trains. And then because they'd come from a distance, and they couldn't get to the beach fast enough. So they'd go to the nearest area, which was where that pool is on the right, and there was a lost children's place and a first aid post. And everybody went to the right. Well, if you were a resident there, you attacked Barry Island from a different direction. And of course we used to come down then and make for the left of the beach, and it was always known that it was always the shallows that went that end and the residents went the other.
You could have a tray and take it down onto the beach.
That's right,
and
yeah.
You'd see everyone coming with staggering with this tray with the tea on.
Yeah.
And then you'd open up your sandwiches, and then I can't remember how much they used to charge.
Well, they used to charge a
Standing
deposit, didn't they, for
yes,
the tray?
and then you'd have the money back.
You'd have the money back.
At all.
Well, I don't think people spent much money on food. Only
you took
the
your
food
own,
that you took,
your own sandwiches.
You wouldn't
yeah.
think of going
Oh,
to buy
you wouldn't think
anything
of going,
or
no,
going
no,
to a
no.
cafe or anything.
No. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
There was always sand in your sandwiches. You know, it was really different.
Well, in Lavernock, they used to have these big boilers, like gas boilers. They used to have heating underneath. I can't remember now exactly what it was, whether it was sticks or coal, but it made a hell of a smell. And you would go and you pay tuppence or something for a boiling water for your
Yes, for your tea.
And there was this big bloke, and all he had on was his bathing trunks, and he was the colour of mud, like really brown. And he put the jug into the boiling water, poured it onto the teapot, and that was our tea.
Well,
I remember as a child when I was about 5, which would be about 1920, going to Barry Island with the family, and one of the first people we saw as we went down towards the beach would be a photographer, He had a wooden tripod with a very primitive camera, and if you wanted your photograph taken, you stood in front of the camera. He focused the camera and put a lens hood on the camera to keep all the light out, and then he put a sheet metal sensitized piece of material in the camera. When he was ready, he removed the lens cap, counted 5 slowly, and then he put the lens cap back on the camera and took the plate out of the camera and put it into an enamel cup. After about 4 or 5 seconds, he dangled the magnet in the fixer and pulled out the plate. And without washing it or anything, he just put it into a little folder, and he charged you quite a small sum of money for it. The only thing about it was that by the next day the picture had faded.
The children used to go down to the water and used to tell them, make sure they remembered what number was on the sea wall and to make for that number, and they wouldn't be lost.
Yeah.
And that was what they always used to come and find their mothers and their parties.
Something I miss is not seeing sandcastles, which kiddies used to seem to build by the dozen on the sands, because Barry is noted for its sands, but there seems to be very little activity now.
It was all sand castles. There was no amusement arcades as there are today. They made their own fun, and of course the greatest fun was building the best sand castle. And of course you'd have prizes then, and a flag stuck in the top, and it was just all your own fun. There was nothing, as I say, there's no amusement, or very few amusement arcades as such, but and then of course swimming and playing ball on the beach and leapfrog, and of course the boys played bat and ball, but it was all very harmless. But old sand castles was the thing to make the best sand, because I seem to remember they gave prizes for the best, so of course we all tried to achieve that standard.
Before sun creams came out, people used to plaster their children with all sorts of grease, even lard, thinking they were protecting them from the sun. Instead of that, they would be frizzling away. Quietly frying.
Olive oil was more popular.
And olive oil too, yes. Yes, if you were sort of more moneyed, you'd use olive oil. If you were poor, you used lard. It's as simple as that.
True.
Yeah.
I remember that there was no promenade, but there were all sand dunes where the promenade is now. And then there was the fair. But later on, when I went to Barry, when I was older, the fair had moved from there to where it is now. So it had moved back nearly 100 yards. But what are my recollections of that was the sand dunes and then the fair, and I can remember this big wheel, and it must have been seats on the wheel and going round. And then I can remember having on the roundabout horses having, but I expect we only had one treat because my mum couldn't afford it, with 4 of us there. But
another thing they had was hitting a lady out of bed. They had a bed rigged up on the stage like a bedroom, and there was a young lady in this bed. So she was supposed to be clad to sleep as needed, lightly clad, and you have 6 choice for about 6 months or something like that. usually 3 shillings a penny, it was usually. And you had to hit a target. It was a metal sheet with a hole in it, and the hole was covered with another piece of metal. But if you hit it, it went straight in, and the bed turned over, and the lady fell out of the bed. If you couldn't afford to go the extra few miles to Barry Island,
That was the next best thing,
was the next best thing. And it was always no trouble place. Penarth was always sedate and Victorian. And they had the pier there. For tuppence you could go along the pier, and there was a hall there, and ice cream. P&A Campbell's was called the White Funnel Line.
That's right.
They were paddle
Penarth,
steamers.
that's right.
And they called it Penarth and Barry, and went to Weston-super-Mare and Minehead, and along the coast, even to Port Gall.
That's right, and then we used to go down Weston, Lynmouth, Ilfracombe, and even as far down as Lundy Island. That was a nice trip down there. We used to find that it was nice and calm on the boats down as far as Ilfracombe, but when you went past Ilfracombe, the Lundy trip, you hit in the waves of the Atlantic, and there's some green faces amongst the people hanging on the side. And
Not only did they go up the coast, but in aid of charity, sometimes they would have what they called honeymoon cruises across here, across to Bristol or something like that on a Saturday, you know, and come back quite late, you know.
So who was going on a honeymoon cruise?
Well, anybody really. It was a boozing trip, really.
Oh, I love to go. I want something. I want. No, the other way, love. Where do you come from? On the wind, on the run. Are you doing nicely now?
I've been asked when I'm going to Barry Island next, and I don't think I'll be going in particular. I may go there accidentally, but in those days it was a real holiday. Lovely sandy beach, one of the best in the country. But today you've got so much competition with Blackpool, Bournemouth, and all sorts of big. Torquay, for instance, is a much better place. And those places now occupy the prime places.
I can see the station now, you know, all children.
Oh, you were lucky to go
getting in on the train. Oh, it was marvellous to go for that one day of the year.
Yeah.